like kind of going into COVID season shutdowns, I almost was feeling a little bit tired and just like I'd been doing the same stuff. And this season has been such a breath, and it's enabled me to have space and to see like, oh, maybe I don't have to do all of those things. And that has been exciting for me. I feel like I'm just getting started again.
You are listening to the Christian Music Archive podcast, part of the New Release Today podcast network. I'm your host, Dave Maurer. Each week, I share stories about Christ, community, and music, chatting with musical guests who you will find listed on the pages of the Christian Music Archive. There are thousands of creative men and women who have helped shape the soundtrack of the Christian faith, and we get to hear their stories, learn about how Christ has made a difference in their life, and hopefully along the way, we'll learn how we can be a better part of our community. I really love Christian music. You probably know that by now. And I also really enjoy talking to people about their life and journey with Christ. And as a regular listener to this podcast, I know you know that too. One of the things that I also enjoy is discovering new music. And it was a couple of years ago that I discovered the music of John Tibbs. His album Dead Man Walking is a great mix of Americana and heartland rock with a declaration of God's promises. I immediately added that album to my regular rotation, and when I started this podcast, I knew I wanted to talk to John and to introduce his music to you. My first couple of attempts to connect with John were about the same time that he and his wife Emily were preparing to welcome their son Jack into the world. So back in February, we were finally able to connect, and today is the day I get to introduce you to John Tibbs. Before our conversation today, I want to tell you about another exciting Mercy Inc. program. Starfish Kids is a child sponsorship and development program in the northern part of Haiti. Students in 30 schools are sponsored each month for $25 a month. That money pays for tuition and books so that the students can get a Christian education. And in addition to school, students are also attending church, and a lot of times the entire family will attend too. That $25 a month contribution also helps pay to train and retain teachers. Now this really surprised me. A well-trained teacher in Haiti makes about 1,800 Haitian goud a month. That's about $20 a month in U.S. currency. That's just crazy. Starfish Kids would love to support and train more kids and add additional schools to the ones they're already working with. I'd like to encourage you to sponsor a girl or a boy today through the great work of Starfish Kids. And you can learn more by visiting mercycompassion.org and clicking on the child sponsorship link. That's mercycompassion.org, and thanks for making a difference for a child today. John Tibbs released his first album back in 2010 and has gone on to release 8 albums. He was touring as an independent artist, got signed to Fair Trade Music, and even had a tour with the Newsboys. He was back to being an independent artist and was as busy as ever, but then 2020 happened, and the world stopped. A global pandemic stopped his ability to tour, which for a musician means a substantial hit to your income. As I mentioned before, he and his wife were expecting their first child, which added even more stress into his life, and as you can imagine, John was feeling a bit apprehensive and frustrated. I'm going to let John tell the rest of the story, so let's listen to my conversation with John Tibbs. Well, it's an honor to have John Tibbs with us today on the podcast, all the way from Nashville, right? But not
Yes,
originally from Nashville.
No, I was born in Kentucky.
Okay.
And grew up in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, home of the groundhog.
I was just going to say, so you, Punxsutawney Phil and you are good friends, right?
Super tight. And then I went to college in Anderson, Indiana, right outside of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And lived there a few years after graduating, and moved down here January of 2015. So this is, I think, the start to our 7th year.
So did you move to Nashville for the music side of things? Is that why you headed there?
Yes, I for some reason early on I was so against ever coming here, which is crazy to me now because this is our home and I can't imagine being anywhere else.
Yeah.
But I was so against it. And basically I got signed, and every time I was in the studio I had to drive down here. It was a 4.5 hour drive. It wasn't that bad, but we were working on the record for 6 to 8 months, and then I went out on tour with the Newsboys.
Hmm.
And that was probably about a 45 day tour. And they departed and came back here on the buses. And that was every weekend, I think for 13 weekends
Oh,
straight,
wow.
pretty much. You leave Tuesday or Wednesday and you get home Monday. And we still weren't done on the album. So I was like, I'm not going to be home for 4 or 5 months. That's not okay. So at that point we had to move. So
And we were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but just recently welcomed a new member to your family. You want to introduce everybody? I mean, I'm not going to see him now, but introduce everybody to your newest family member.
yes. So Emily and I had our firstborn, Jack Wolfgang Tibbs. He's born in October. So he is here at the house, but he's asleep, so I can't talk.
So we need to whisper.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a tiny house, so I probably should keep it down.
So we won't be asking you to rock the mic today, right
Yeah,
now.
no.
Well,
Get in trouble.
let's start out. We also talked a little bit about the fact that you and I are both preachers' kids, and that brings its own kind of unique
Yeah.
mix to who we are as
Experience.
individuals. So tell us a little bit about growing as a preacher's kid, and how did music fit into that mix?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was singing in church when I was probably 4,
Okay.
Born in Kentucky, tiny town, tiny church. So the offertories, I was up there quite a bit doing either a song on the piano or singing. And then we moved, and the church in Punxsutawney was a little bit bigger and had a big youth group. And so I got involved in the youth worship band there, and just had some great opportunities. I feel like I've had such an interesting experience as a pastor's kid. The childhood part of it was just perfect.
Hmm.
I was very fortunate, healthy church situation, healthy home life, and honestly just had a very large extended family. And I still count those people today as extra aunts and uncles, and had a wonderful time. Now, after I graduated high school, I think things at the church started to get a little complicated in the inner workings of it all. My parents have been there for 16, 17 years at that time.
Wow.
And they moved suddenly to Illinois to take a job at a church because I had some grandparents that were in that area who had some health issues. And so it was kind of like, well, we've been at this church for a long time. It's probably a good time to do something different. And it'd be great to be back in the area because of all the health stuff. And basically my parents, I think, kind of walked into that situation not fully understanding all of the details that were hiding in that house. And so it became a very unhealthy situation quickly. And that ended, I think it ended kind of overnight, and it caught my parents off guard. And so, they had just bought their very first home for the first time, like 2 months before that.
Oh, wow.
And Dad was the senior pastor, and my mom, I think, was part-time there also. And so they had just moved across the country and all of a sudden didn't have a job. And it was a very painful thing for them. And it was painful to see that as their son. And
how did that affect you going through those situations? I mean, you're empathetic towards what mom and dad are going through, but that's got to have a toll on you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I think, because that experience has happened, and I've seen it plenty of other places too. And I've, personally experienced things, and I've just learned how intricate and complicated it is when your faith community is tied to your personal finances.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that isn't an old concept. I feel like that's a very contemporary thing,
Yeah.
to be a full-time pastor where like that is your job. And, obviously I've seen so many wonderful things about it, but I think it does kind of need to get paused because, when you think of the early church, like that's not how it had been. It had been a group of people saying, like, like, like you are the pastor,
Yeah.
teach, right? And,
Like Paul was
you
a
know,
tent maker, for example. He had a job and then preached on the weekends or in the evenings or whenever. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a lot of problems with that too, because then you're, burning the candle on both ends, right?
Right.
But anyways, all to say is, it's definitely intricate and complicated, and I've got a lot of great friends who are pastors, and I think very highly of them. I'm not sure if I could ever do that again. I will work at a church full time
I was
or
going to
two or
say,
three
yeah,
times.
because you went, I mean, so it didn't scare you away enough to say, I'm not going to do it myself
It
because you became a
happened.
pastor for a while.
Well, so here's the crazy thing. I had a great experience as a pastor's kid. I graduated college and I was a worship pastor at a church I worked part-time through college. It was actually Emily's home church too,
Okay.
to add some extra complication to it. It was a very, very big church, about 2,000 people, maybe 2,500. And they hired this punk kid out of college to transition from orchestra and choral to guitars and B3 organs. And
Oh, fun. Yeah.
I was the guinea pig. And And so I was in that. And then I had a brother who was 2 years younger than me who had just graduated college and was a youth pastor in Indianapolis. And in the 6 month time span, the thing at the church for our parents kind of all fell apart.
Right.
And I've got a brother who's youth pastor, and his personal faith completely changed
Oh, wow.
in a way that kind of disqualified him from being the pastor at that church. And that was also a very painful thing for him and for the church that there and for
Oh, sure.
our family. And then things at the church I was at, I felt like I would stay there too long. I felt like it was time for me to go tour, but I was so hesitant about it. And things at the church were just getting complicated. And it was Emily's home church. So there was a lot to it. All of that stuff I experienced in about a 6 month time period.
No stress at all. None at all.
Yeah. But that's how it goes. So yeah, I mean, I think because of that, like all of those things happening at one time, it kind of opened my eyes because I saw it personally for us. I was our only income. Emily at the time, sorry, Emily was a college student. She did have a job, but like our goal was, to get her out of college and, to see that with our parents. And so, yeah, I mean, it is something that I think is a very special calling, and I think it's taxing. And I also think that that the whole problem maybe sometimes it pops up with the whole idea of being a full-time pastor as a career is maybe you shouldn't be a full-time pastor for your whole career. Maybe you should do it for 10 years,
Yeah.
And I think in our culture, there's such a ideal about building your career,
Yeah.
and that's seeped into the church world. And so it's maybe it should just be a season, and you go and you give of yourself for 10 years, because I think the only person that's really been on this earth that's capable of just giving to that capacity is Jesus.
Yeah.
And he was Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and how does that fit into the music side of things too? Because as a music person,
Yeah.
unless you're writing for other people or you're a backup artist, backing
Yes.
somebody else up, this is your life at the same time. So your ministry is again your money.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is connected, but it's but basically I'm able to support ourselves by the kindness and generosity and continued support of people that these songs I create encourage,
Mm-hmm.
and help. And so it just feels a little bit different to me. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to do this. It's been a wonderful journey. COVID has been insane.
I was just going to go there.
Yeah.
As money being music being your income, and then all of a sudden you can't do music.
Yeah, I can't tour. Yeah.
Oh, and you had a baby come along during that time. And talk about another 6 months of stress.
Yeah, like 10 or 12. Emily and I were always intentional to wait to have kids, and we thought we were picking the perfect time. Like, the whole career thing I had was in a really good place, and Emily was about to graduate with her higher ed degree and had a teaching job that fit that, and so it's perfect time. So we decided to try to have a kid, and we got pregnant a month before COVID shut everything down. And it was such a lesson to me. Yeah. It was like,
how so?
Well, you think you can control things, and you think you can plan and schedule, and I am such a organizer and a planner, and part of that is good. Part of it comes out of a probably unhealthy place where I'm just trying to be in charge. And this whole season taught me, like, you're not in charge.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing though, because everything's been okay for us personally. Obviously, COVID's been horrible and killed so many people, and there's a lot of economic struggle today because of it. But we were okay. And I think it's just been a lesson to me that's like, yes, you should plan, and you should work hard, and you should give your best and excellence, and commit yourself to those things. At the same time, you're not in charge, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. You're sounding a lot to me like a firstborn. Are you firstborn son?
Yeah.
Yeah. Firstborn as well. Firstborn,
okay.
Preacher's kid, doer.
Yeah, man.
Everything's centered around what I do and how I get things done. How do you wrestle with that sense of, okay, it's out of my control. God, you take over. Because for me, it's like, okay, God, you take over, but how can I help?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Exercise, man. just like having those healthy outlets to ground yourself, and to remind yourself of those truths, because it's so important to say it, but I think we have to continue to get to give it over, in air quotes, like, because he certainly has it, but I think it just has to be a continued choice.
Yeah. I had a counselor that I was seeing for a while that said, Dave, you're a great human doing. You're not a very good human being.
Oh,
and
man.
To learn how to be in situations. And I think, you're experiencing with your son, Jack, right now, opportunities. There's not much you can do with him. You can change his diaper. You can, dance around with him, but more, he just needs you to be with him. Right. And I wonder how often God looks at us as like, would you just relax in my arms and let me do stuff for you?
Absolutely, man. That's a good point.
Well, you were signed, and you started out indie, and then like everybody else, and then you got signed, but then you transitioned back to indie.
Yes.
There's some freedoms to that. There's some challenges to that. Talk about that transition to being an independent artist again, and how that's working for you.
Well, so I signed a deal to do an album, and we did that album, and it accomplished everything that our team was, out to accomplish, I guess. And when it came time to do a second record, I really just felt like I was losing a sense of the identity that I had kind of got me to that point.
Is that the fact that the record label's trying to mold you into something that they need?
Yes. And, they do that. Yeah. And they do that. I don't think they do it out of like, out of out of a place of like spite or anything like that. They're just doing it as a business sense. Like
Right.
their whole universe is like set on like an airplay hit. And, the thing that I do is like I have like a group of people that deeply connect to the songs I make, and I continue to put music out and they pass it on, and that group gets a little bit bigger, and it's very organic like that. And it isn't like an instant, big song.
Right.
And so, I kind of came to them at the table and was like, listen, I understand where you're coming from. Yes, like it's possible to do that for this next record, hire these people to make this album that get it sounding that way. But that isn't who I am. That isn't the thing that brought me here. That's not the place where I would like to see myself going. So I asked out of that contract, and they were very gracious and very supportive, and they were okay with that. Which is huge, because oftentimes when people in the situation I was in try to ask out, they're like, you can't get out.
Yeah.
And then they're just stuck. So I was very fortunate and so thankful for them. Also, through that time of being signed, I quickly found out that it's a big business, but it's a very small business. And all those record companies, they kind of do the same thing, and they outsource a lot. And so I felt like, man, if I can get a distribution partner, and if I can get an advertising partner, and, I have been in town now for a few years, and I got the connections to the producers that I would like to have help. And also that point, was touring a lot and had the ability to pay to do the albums. And so we just kind of kicked that off and did it. We started in the first project came out in 2017, and we've put out brand new music every year since. So upcoming in 2021, I've got a brand new song coming out on Friday, which by the time this podcast is out, it's going to be old news.
Yeah.
But I'm putting out 10 songs starting from February through December. And, it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so thankful, and especially, kind of like we were talking about earlier, COVID made me so thankful that I did this pivot.
Yeah.
Because, as an independent, you have to pay for everything, but then you own it. And so,
Right.
I had these projects that I had owned that, that kind of really helped ensure that when this was all done, I would be able to get back out there. And so I'm very thankful for that. And, man, I feel like, I've been doing it now full time for 8 years. Wow. The end of 8 years here in the spring.
Wow.
And I feel so much like kind of going into COVID season shutdowns, I almost was feeling a little bit tired, and just like I'd been doing the same stuff. And this season has been such a breath, and it's enabled me to have space and to see like, oh, maybe I don't have to do all of those things.
Yeah.
And that has been exciting for me. I feel like I'm just getting started again.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, really excited about the future, and so thankful for the opportunities, I get to do this. And
yeah. Well, the last big album that you got out was The Wilder Years, was your last biggie, but then you came out with Hymns from a Room, which was kind of what I sensed. This is me in my home, stuck at home, singing my songs.
Exactly. Yeah. So that first EP you're talking about, that was a studio recording, and that came out beginning of March in 2020. And I remember I was going out on a maybe 30-day tour with a band called I Am They. It was just us two. It was going to be a wonderful tour.
Yeah.
And we did 3 shows right as the album came out, and they were wonderful shows. They were in Iowa, and came home, and we got up the next day on the bus while we we're going to town, and that was the day that like the stock market crashed really big. And like I'd been paying attention, like I knew everything that was going on overseas with COVID, and was like, I think this is going to be a thing here for us. But really, honestly, just thought it was going to be okay, I'll probably get a couple of concerts canceled. Had no idea on the scale. And I got home, and I had a show myself before jumping back out on the tour Friday through Sunday. So I had a concert Thursday. I had to get up early, head to the airport like early, and that night before was the night it was announced that Tom Hanks had COVID and the NBA canceled right when the tip off. And I just remember thinking, I may wake up and I'm not going to leave tomorrow. And I don't even know if I should leave tomorrow. We're pregnant, I remember I was packing a suitcase and it was early and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was packing the suitcase. I was going back and forth between the suitcase I was spread out in our bedroom and in the closet. And I was so kind of dazed off and thinking about what I should do that I totally forgot. And so I was just pacing back and forth from the closet to the suitcase, not packing a thing. And sure enough, I got the text saying, hey, if you're headed to the airport, head home. But this is going to happen. And so it was the first 2 weeks of concerts, and a couple of days into it, you saw what was going on. You're like, I don't think that we're going to be going out anytime soon. And so, of course, everything was canceled. And out of that season, I had just put out a brand new EP, and it's been really encouraging to me personally. It's still done fantastic. But I was very apprehensive and down about that. Yeah, I was very out of all of those songs. Had a great spring tour and dates all lined up, and just really felt defeated. And I was just at home, and the hymn "It Is Ul El" just kind of came to me, and I hadn't thought about that song in forever, and suddenly it was right there, and I just grabbed the guitar and started just playing it, and it felt so peaceful, and it felt true. And gave me hope. And so I was like, man, I just need to do this. And so I just sat down and did an EP, just acoustic and vocal in a bedroom, completely different than anything I've ever done, and just put it out. And I was like, I don't know. And, I think it's pretty funny. I was telling someone the other day the story that so to get to a distribution, to get it out to Spotify and Apple and everything, you have to have a good bit of a heads up for them to get it out there. And finished it beginning of April, and they're like, we'll get it out, but it was going to be 60 days or something like that. And I was like, I'm afraid that once this is gone, this kind of time to connect people in this way is going to be gone. I'm afraid this is all going to be over. And I was so wrong. So I did the first EP and had a wonderful connection to it. I thought, let's just keep doing this. So I did a second hymns EP. And then, so I'm doing a third this spring, because people just continue to connect to it. I haven't really ever had any success on Pandora, and there was a hymn on the second EP that's been streamed 500,000 times, and we have no idea how.
Wow.
And so it's just been really, really cool because I felt as if those songs were teaching me and comforting me, and it is such a different thing than anything I've done. It's just personal and acoustic and very just direct and to the point and simple. And I was afraid people aren't going to like it, but people have just been connecting to it. So we're just going to keep doing that. So
I guess that answers my next question, because you've been kind of this Midwest rocker, and I've appreciated that, because I like, real guitar, real drums, as opposed to the pop stuff. There's nothing wrong with the pop stuff, just not what I prefer. But now you've got all this success with this kind of acoustic solo stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to change your long-term thing, or is this just a season?
Yeah, no, this is just a season. I think this is just a season. I cannot wait to get back into the studio. And I've got all the songs, picked and planned. I just need to wait. Till it is a smart time to do it. And so, but at the same time, I didn't want to just kind of not do anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so, no, this is absolutely just the season. And I get back into those amps are going to get cranked all the way up. So.
Well, I know you've got Jack sleeping in the other room and you need to get to attend to him, but one of the things that we do every Saturday, we send out our prayer newsletter and ask folks to pray for musicians and the things that they're going through. What is it that we can be praying for you and Emily and Jack and your music ministry here in the days and weeks ahead?
Yeah, for strength and for peace. those are the two things that I think that like God is in us and offers us. And those are the two things that I've just been clinging to. And so his continued strength, because he has, seen us through, and he has given us such a great peace too. So
I hope you enjoyed getting to know John. As he mentioned during our chat, his third EP of hymns is just about ready to be released, and he's graciously shared the first song off that record. So let's listen to Holy, Holy, Holy by John Tibbs.
Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, early in the morning thy song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. Holy, 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 though the darkness hide thee, though the eye of sinful men thy glory may not see, only thou art holy, there is none beside thee, perfect in power, in love and purity. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, all thy works shall praise thy name in earth and sky and sea. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. Oh, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. God in three persons, blessed Trinity.
As always, thanks for joining me for this conversation today. I am grateful that we get to spend this time together each week hearing stories of God's amazing faithfulness. As a regular listener to this podcast, would you mind taking a few minutes and rating it on your favorite podcast app? Reviews and ratings really help spread the word so that other folks can hear about these great conversations. And if you have comments or questions for me, please feel free to drop me a message on any of the social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon by searching for @CCMExchange. Or you can always drop me an email on the website christianmusicarchive.com. I'm really looking forward to our time together next week when I have another great conversation with one of the musicians you'll find on the pages of the Christian Music Archive. So until then, remember this: God loves you. In fact, He's crazy about you.